You all know me already, but I'll introduce myself to those of you who don't. I'm Lauren Gross. I'm the director of the Gross Family Center for the Study of Antisemitism and the Holocaust. Please take a moment to silence your smartwatches, your phones, whatever else might ring. And before I start, I just want to make a comment, two comments very quickly. One of our most recent speakers, Waleed Faris, it was just found out in the news yesterday that he was monitored by the FBI under the Biden administration and lost his job as a result of it. Welcome, Rabbi. That was the first thing I'd like to share with you, that really nobody is safe. Secondly, safety, of course, is the primary matter. And on that note, we all know about the 2 ballistic missiles that hit in Israel yesterday. Interceptors were not effective. One struck in Adar, one struck in Dimona, and 175 people are wounded so far. So far, thankfully, nobody has died, but there are at least 24 critically injured in the hospital. So if we could all just say a brief prayer for them. I also am a little sad to announce that this is our penultimate event for the season, but I'm thrilled to announce that we've added a program at the request of FAU's new president, Adam Hasner, who asks us to partner with FAU and their Florida Israel Institute to host Mr. Hasner in discussion with the Honorable Roy Altman, a judge on the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Florida. The topic will be the judge's brand new book entitled Israel on Trial, and everyone who comes will get a complimentary copy of the book. The special event will be held on April 27th, unfortunately at 7 p.m., but it'll still be light, so you can drive. Before we get to our program, I want to acknowledge the amazing team of volunteers who arrive here week after week, month after month, early in the morning when they could be sleeping in, to welcoming each and every one of you into this venue, always with professionalism, a smile, and gratitude for your arrival. Please stand when I call your names. Michael Bass, Helen Bohm, Dee Damio, Sue Berman, Brian Berman, Susan Kane, Gail Gerzoff, Steve Gerzoff. You're not standing over there. Stand up and be acknowledged. Yvette Gutkin, Joan Rosenblatt, Talia Rook, and Sybil Silver. Thank you all so much for everything that you do to make this event successful. I also want to thank Bridget Bass, who's standing in the back of the room. Bridget is the person that creates these fantastic hour-long multimedia PowerPoints that engage and educate each of you at every event. The work is arduous, but adds a dimension to our programming that separates us from the pack. The Gross Family Center, I'm proud to say, created this idea and has become a well-known idea, the only one ever anywhere in the country except at the 16,000 person APAC event. So I want to thank Bridget for the amount of work that she puts in so that you all can learn when you sit here waiting for the speakers, and we appreciate you coming so early so that you can learn before you even learn from the speaker. Many of you also see my husband, Steve Oder, schlepping boxes, moving furniture to accommodate late arrivals, and packing up shop. But what you don't see is his work behind the scenes. Steve is the tech guy, our chief technical officer who schedules all the email blasts, works the back end, does the registration process, and keeps our webpage updated. Don't tell him, but I would be lost without him. And finally, of course, I want to thank my parents, Gail and Paul, without whose generosity, none of this would be possible. They set the goal, they provide the budget, and then they let me run free. They do not ever ask anything except for me to do my best. It's kind of like I'm still in high school when I came home with a test score of 99 and they would say, "Why didn't you get 100?" Your presence here today tells them, I think we're scoring 100. I thank you so much. And now on to our speaker. The first time I heard Mort Klein speak at an event, I guess you could call it shock and awe. This was no ordinary leader of your typical Jewish organization. Mort is brave, unapologetic, a master of the history and the facts that are so elusive to too many. The man is a warrior. You just watched some recent media hits of Mort Klein, the national president of ZOA for 33 years. There's good reason for the fact that he is the longest serving president of any Jewish organization in America. There is simply no one else like him. Mort was born in a displaced persons camp in Germany to parents who survived the Holocaust. His family made their way to Philadelphia, and they were extremely impoverished. A great day out, according to Mort, was a trip to the welfare agency to get used clothing. Mort recounts a funny story about how growing up in the predominantly Black neighborhood in South Philly, he was a real sportsman. Playing amongst his schoolmates, he considered himself to be a decent athlete. But at 16, his family moved, and Mort learned that he could be a great athlete amongst his new white and Jewish neighbors. Mort's father was a rabbi dedicated to Torah who loved Israel, and his mother encouraged her two sons to live Jewish lives, but with low-stress jobs. That advice was obviously not heeded. Mort is a brilliant academician. He served as a biostatistician alongside the famous Nobel laureate Linus Pauling. He also taught math at Temple University. In addition, he's an acclaimed economist serving in the Nixon, Ford, and Carter administrations. However, by 1993, with the signing of the disastrous Oslo Accords, Mort knew his stars were realigning. It didn't hurt that his mentor and colleague, Linus Pauling, expressed negative views on Israel, so much so that the two scientists had to agree not to discuss it. With the encouragement of his wife, Rita, Mort became president of the Philadelphia chapter of the ZOA in order to grab a platform for what he thought might be a short stint before returning to his academic pursuits. And here we are, 33 years later. During that time, Mort has received almost 30 major achievement awards, written over 1,000 articles, appeared on every major television network, spoken before Congress, the Knesset, and around the world. Mort was the spearhead in the battle to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. Mort Klein has accomplished more for the Jewish people than anyone could possibly recount. 2 days after the massacre of October 7, Mort posted on X, quote, "If Israel hadn't thrown 10,000 Jews out of their homes in Gaza in 2005 and removed the idea of soldiers from there, this nightmare would not have occurred." The Conference of Presidents of major Jewish American organizations voted 50-1, approving the withdrawal. Guess who voted against it? ZOA. I am convinced that Hashem has put Mort here for this work, for these times. The Wall Street Journal said, and I quote, "We should snap a salute to those who were right about Oslo, including Mort Klein, who was wise, brave, and unflinchingly honest. When the history of the American Jewish struggle in these years is written, Mr. Klein will emerge as an outsized figure," close quote. Even the New York Times admits, quote, Mort Klein is a man who ferrets out anti-Semitism wherever it is, a rare voice from the outset in the American Jewish community against the Oslo Accords, and an iconoclast who is a prolific speechmaker, writer, and congressional lobbyist. I am incredibly honored and humbled to introduce the man who many consider to be, quoting from the Times of Israel, America's most important Jew. Please welcome the National President of ZOA, Morton A. Klein.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see, I need to move this. So can I do that? I think that'll work. That won't work. Should have done that an hour ago. It's not flat. I can't put my notes down. Put your nose here. No, it's not good. Can you turn this off? Okay, that's better. Well, thank you all for being here. I assume you're done with brunch. Beautiful day like this, I would not have showed up, but thanks for showing up for this. First of all, I want to thank Lauren Gross and her father for putting together this Gross Holocaust Center to fight anti-Semitism and expose the issues of the Holocaust, which pertain even to this very day. It's become extraordinarily important now to have the types of speakers that Lauren Gross and the center bring to teach us and educate us about these critical issues that affect all of us and will affect all of us in the future. I believe that Hashem, that God, saved Donald Trump from that man who shot at his head and made him move his head to the right, which saved his life. I believe God saved him so Donald Trump can lead this war against Iran. By the way, as I say before I talk, for those of you who've heard me before, I have Tourette syndrome. I make sounds I can't control. I have facial tics I can't control. And I frequently say the same thing. That's why the first woman who had showed any interest in marrying me, I married her immediately. I did not want to live alone because of these tics. Today, President Trump is overseeing the most important war to defend America, our values, our way of life, the West, and really even Israel, inadvertently, since World War II. It's the most important war we've fought since World War II. Winston Churchill said, a civilization and country is not destroyed by evil men. It is destroyed by weak and frightened men who will not defend a righteous and good country. And that righteous and good country is the United States of America and Eretz Yisrael. We are fighting the Islamic Republic of Iran, who at weekly rallies, every week in Iran, huge rallies, screaming death to America, death to Israel. America is the great Satan. Israel is the little Satan. Elie Wiesel taught us, if people say they want to kill you, believe them. They've been screaming this for 47 years every week. And in their podcasts, by them and their proxies, they state openly and publicly, first, we're going to kill all the Jews. Oh, yes. But after we kill all the Jews, we're going to kill all the Christians. And after we kill all the Christians, we're going to kill all the kafirs, the non-Muslim people, the non-Islamic, non-believers of Muhammad and Islam. And then we'll create an Islamic caliphate and take over the world. Now, they say this repeatedly. Why is this not on the front page of every paper in America? Why aren't our Jewish leaders screaming about this in their own speeches, in their own articles that they write? This is a fact, and we have to face the facts. At Al-Azhar University, on October 19th, that's 12 days after October 7th, the nightmare, Ahmed El-Tayeb, the dean of Al-Azhar University in Cairo, the most prestigious theological Islamic university in the world, issued an edict on October 19th, and probably most of you don't know this because it wasn't reported. And he said to the imams, fight and make sermons that we need to kill every Jew. He said it on October 19th, the dean of the most important Islamic university. Let's face these facts. This danger begin on October 7th? No, of course it hasn't. When Iran took over in this revolution in 1979, they immediately took hostage 52 American citizens, kidnapped them, and kept them for 1.5 years. They killed 241 Marines in the US barracks in Lebanon. They killed almost 1,000 Americans in Iraq. They killed Americans in attacks on the US embassies in Africa, the Khobar Towers in Saudi Arabia, the USS Cole. Iran, and this is almost never talked about, Iran trained, facilitated, and funded 9/11. They were the most important factor in murdering 3,000 American citizens, was Iran. And people have not talked about that. And of course, on 10/7, 45 Americans were murdered, as well as almost 1,200 Jews. The suicide bombings in Israel, almost all funded and promoted by Iran. Argentina, you remember the massacre of 90 Jews there killed. So we should have gone to war against Iran a long time ago. We waited 47 years. That was a mistake. After they committed these atrocities against us, we should have gone to war immediately then to stop them in their tracks early. We didn't. But I will tell you, as I wrote in my op-ed in USA Today last week, I said, my first sentence, I said, if Israel didn't exist, if there was no Israel, they didn't exist, if it didn't exist, America had to go to war against this dangerous, corrupt, human rights abusing Islamic Republic of Iran who endangers us in America and the West. And so this is a ridiculous, really almost a laughable lie that America is doing this because Israel pressured them. Like a country with 9 million people could convince Donald Trump to do something he doesn't want to do. It's laughable. And yet that's what we're hearing from so many quarters, including from that low IQ man, Tucker Carlson. Our intelligence sources a few weeks ago informed us that they were 10 days away from building 11 nuclear weapons. They openly told this in the meetings with Steve Witkoff. They just said it openly. It wasn't a secret. They said, yes, in 10 days we're going to have nukes. They told this to Jared Kushner and said they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop enriching uranium. Our intelligence informed us that Iran was about to move their nuclear facilities and their intercontinental missile weapons facilities. And what's that missile called? Intercontinental. Is that meant for Israel? Intercontinental. It's meant for us. They were building 100 intercontinental missiles a month, and our intelligence told us they were going to move this deep in the ground under a mountain within a few weeks. If we didn't act now, we would never be able to hit and destroy those facilities. It was an imperative to act now, an imperative. And I will tell you something. Every member of Congress who opposes this holy war to protect us and protect the West, I believe is acting either in an incredibly ignorant way or even a traitorous way. We need this war to protect us, and these members of Congress opposing it are just wrong, wrong, wrong. By the way, if this was only for civilian use, this nuclear facility, why are they burying it so deep in the ground? There's the proof you know that it's nuclear weapons to destroy America and the West. You know, President Trump, who we saw this weekend while we were staying at Mar-a-Lago, says that these Iranian Muslim leaders, he says they're crazy, they're lunatics, they're mentally ill. I don't agree with that. These leaders of Iran are fanatically religious Shiite Muslims. They believe in the literal meaning of the words of the Quran, in which Allah promotes hostility and violence and murder toward non-Muslims and non-Muslim states. They promote Islamic rule over the world as a matter of a religious belief, not because of insanity. And this really makes it even more dangerous and more frightening. And why is Iran launching missiles at their brothers and sisters in other Arab countries? UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, even Qatar, not to mention Cyprus. And none of these people were at war with them. There's two reasons they're doing this, I believe. One, they think by doing this, these countries will pressure America to stop the war. That is one reason. But I'll tell you a second reason that's not discussed. They believe what the Quran prophesies. It says, if there's enough chaos in the world, this will hasten the coming of the Muslim Messiah, the Mahdi. And that's what these religious Iranian Muslims believe. They think by causing more chaos, having more of a war, maybe a world war, the Messiah will come. This is their religious belief, and that's one of the reasons they're not giving up, and I don't believe they will give up. These Iranian actions are based on the literal belief in the word of the Islamic holy book, the Quran. And yet, we have to deeply appreciate and see extraordinary miracles that happened in the last 2 or 3 years. 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when Israel was threatened by the Iranian-named Ring of Fire, by Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Syria, Iran itself, it seemed an impossible situation. It seemed if one goes to war against Israel, they'll all join. Hundreds of thousands of missiles will rain down. All have now been degraded. Hamas is vastly degraded. Hezbollah is almost non-existent. The Houthis are degraded. Syria, Assad is gone and it's been degraded. Iran has been vastly degraded. This is a miracle from God that we never could have predicted. And we have to really appreciate the actions of Hashem. It's almost really enough to make you a little bit more religious when you see the miracles that we're seeing today. And after 3 weeks of war, almost 100 Iranian leaders have been killed, 100, 10,000 terrorists. They've destroyed the Iran Air Force, the Navy, over 100 ships, the mine layers ships, 90% of the missiles destroyed, 80% of the drones, 70% of the launchers. The UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar haven't joined with Iran. They've joined in supporting the US. We have total air superiority. We've destroyed the facilities that build missiles, and they can no longer enrich uranium, which is necessary to develop nuclear weapons. These are miraculous events that should hearten us and see that really Hashem is active in this world and is protecting us. So this is, and now we see in the last day or so that these missiles have been able to travel over 2,000 miles. We didn't know that. We know that now because we see where they've hit. So this is, what is the word they use? An immediate threat? Imminent, thank you. I majored in math. I didn't know English. An imminent threat. To me, an imminent threat is when you see if certain things happen, it'll be an imminent threat. That's an imminent threat, and we know that that is an imminent threat right now. And we should be comforted by the fact that a new McLaughlin poll that just came out this week shows strong support for using military force to stop Iran from developing nukes and intercontinental missiles. 57% of Americans say they support this. If America and Israel can eliminate this radical Islamic terrorist regime, bring in a new regime that truly reflects the good people of Iran, it will transform the Middle East for the good, bring a real possibility of a more peaceful Middle East and a more peaceful world. So we should be grateful for what's going on with all the trauma and all the difficulties and the loss of life. If we didn't do what we're doing now, we'll have much more loss of life later if they have these nukes and these intercontinental ballistic missiles. So I am confident and I am grateful for the actions that America and Israel are taking to protect the entire Western world. That had nothing to do with the speech I'm supposed to make today. Nothing. So I'm going to stop now and the heck with my other speech. No. Unfortunately, this war forced me to talk about things that are on all of our minds. But I want to talk about now how ZOA operates and why Michael Oren, a former ambassador from Israel to the United States, told the Conference of Presidents in Israel, this is the 50 major, so-called major Jewish organizations in the United States. He gave a speech to us a number of months back. I raised my hand to ask a question. My wife was with me. She can validate this. And Michael Oren said, and Michael Oren is a left-of-center guy. I debated him, for example, in the Gaza withdrawal that he supported. And he said, Mort, before you ask your question, I want to say one thing to everyone in this room. Mort, you and ZOA have been right about everything. Michael Oren said that. I said, Michael, can you get my wife to say that? So, we at ZOA live by Winston Churchill's dictum, by his dictum. His dictum is, he has many dictums, but this is the one I'm talking about. He said, you must look at the facts, for the facts are looking at you. You must look at the facts, for the facts are looking at you. What does that simple phrase mean? It means the facts are there. The truth is there. If you ignore it, it's still there. So you better act and live according to the facts and not ignore them. That's what Churchill has explained. He used that phrase to explain what the Nazis were doing in the 30s, and people were ignoring it completely. Abraham Lincoln depicted this principle by posing the question of how many legs does a dog have if you call the tail a leg? Of course, the answer is 4, because calling a tail a leg doesn't make it a leg. Look at the facts. Calling a Palestinian regime a peace partner when it's violated every obligation in Oslo. It doesn't arrest terrorists. It promotes hatred and violence. It pays Arabs to murder Jews. Calling them a peace partner in light of their actions doesn't make them a peace partner. They are not a peace partner. They are a vicious enemy of Israel and the Jewish people. And we should stop acting as if Mahmoud Abbas is a moderate peacemaker. He's the exact opposite. Describing an Islamic terrorist who screams Allahu Akbar while murdering Jews or attacking a synagogue or destroying a nightclub in Orlando or hitting a major entertainment center in Paris. By calling such a man a gunman of unknown motives doesn't change the reality that he was an Islamic terrorist who believed in murdering innocent Jews and others and Christians. Doesn't change it. We at ZOA, we look at the data, the facts as they are, not as we want them to be. We pay attention to what the enemies of Jews in Israel say, what they do, instead of engaging in wishful thinking. I remember some of the Oslo leaders in Israel used to say, I don't want to live in a world where we can't make peace with the Palestinian Arabs. Well, that's nice. You're going to have to leave the world. You know, that's really, they refuse to look at those facts. But we at ZOA, we don't minimize or whitewash the terror and incitement and the reality that exists. A prime example is Oslo. You remember the Oslo agreements 32 years ago. We were the only major Jewish group to oppose Oslo. And boy, was I vilified for it. And why did we oppose Oslo? Are we visionaries? Are we geniuses? No. We simply looked at the facts and believed them. I saw, as president of ZOA, that the very night that Arafat signed the Oslo Accords, the very night he went on Jordanian television and said, don't worry, there was Arab brethren. Don't worry. We are not making peace with Israel. This is simply our staged plan. First, we get as much land as we can. Then we're going to set up our state. Then we're going to destroy Israel. He said it the night he signed the Accords, and the entire Jewish world ignored it, including the Israeli officials, ignored it. And we saw in the first few weeks, he's kept promoting incitement, even though that was required under Oslo. He didn't arrest terrorists or extradite them as Oslo requires. He refused to confiscate or destroy weapons. We saw a surge in Arab terror. We saw they're continuing to teach hatred and violence in their schools and their mosques, TV and radio. We saw that they started instituting a pay-to-slay program where they paid Arabs a lifetime pension if they murder one Jew. And the more Jews they murder, the higher their lifetime pension. And the pension is 5 times the average salary of a Palestinian. It is very lucrative to murder Jews. They spend $400 million a year doing this. We saw all this. How can we see all this and say, oh, thank God for Oslo, things are working out nicely? No, we said this is impossible. This is a fraud and a lie. They do not want peace. And yet, the organized Jewish world ignored all this. We were alone exposing these violations. But Jewish groups tried to silence ZOA. They called me and us extremists. Because of my tics, they said, look at those tics and the facial and the sounds he makes. Morton Klein is mentally ill. Look at those tics. And I used to say to people, look, I may be mentally ill, but the tics are not the proof of that. That's separate. The tics are neurochemical. So that's, if you're saying that's the basis, you have to have a better basis than that. They said, I'm trying to stop peace. I talked to the Jewish leaders. They said, this will take time. It doesn't happen overnight, Morton. There are just a few radicals who are doing this. The executive director of the Conference of Presidents called me, cursing at me with F words and SH words. What is wrong with you, Morton? Get with the program. We're moving toward peace, and people like you are making it more difficult. Please start supporting Oslo. Cursing at me. Max Fisher, may rest in peace, one of the wealthy, important Jewish leaders, called me up and said, would you please stop what you're doing? You're hurting this process. I know why you're doing this, Mort, said Max Fisher to me. You're just trying to make a name for yourself by being contrary. That's what he said to this. Nobody was supporting us. We were being attacked brutally. But we didn't stop because of the facts. Because we looked at the facts, they were there. Another example, how we differ from the others. Prime Minister Fayyad, who was the Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority a number of years back, came to speak to us in Israel. When he spoke, after he finished speaking to us, I got up. This is the whole Jewish leadership sitting there. I got up and I held up this emblem. This emblem is the official Fatah emblem. You see all of Israel with a keffiyeh over it, Arafat in the center, a rifle. This is the official emblem. I held it up and I said, Mr. Fayyad, if you're saying you want to make peace with Israel, why do you have such an emblem showing all of Israel with a keffiyeh over it? This is not a peace emblem. Why is this what you're doing? When I put this up, a major guy sitting on the podium next to Fayyad started doing this. With his finger across his neck, cut it, stop it. The people around me, including Eric Yaffe, I'm naming names, and other Jewish leaders sitting near me, we kept screaming at me in loud whispers, sit down, stop it. He's our guest. What are you doing? You're embarrassing all of us. As opposed to saying, yes, Mort, what the hell are they doing with this emblem? This is horrible. And Fayyad saw that people are yelling at me. He saw that the guy on the podium is doing this, and he sees he doesn't have to worry about me too much. But I wouldn't stop. And I kept saying, why are you using this emblem? He refused to answer. I said, I'm not going to stop until you answer. Why are you using such an emblem if you want peace with the Jewish state? And finally, because I wouldn't stop asking the question in front of the whole group, he finally said, okay, sometimes we make a mistake. He acknowledged that. Sometimes we make a mistake. But had he seen other people yelling at him about this and saying this is an outrage, he would have had a much bigger message. He didn't get any message, unfortunately. Another episode is we met with Mohammed Mahdi, the editor of Passia. That's the major intellectual journal in the Palestinian Authority. That week, an Israeli Jew had killed an Arab. And we were all apologizing to this guy, Mahdi, for this Arab being killed by the Jews. It was wrong. And I got up and I said, we've all apologized to you and to the Palestinian Arab people because of this killing by a Jew of an innocent Arab. Will you, Mr. Mahdi, will you condemn the Palestinian Arab terror attacks in the last 2 weeks where 12 Jews have been killed? Will you, just like we condemned this attack, will you condemn that attack? And he said, We Arabs are suffering. Our lives are miserable. I said, I know. But will you please, our lives are miserable. I said, okay, I know. But will you condemn Arabs killing Jews this past week? We have no rights. We can't do anything. We're oppressed by the Israelis. Okay, but will you condemn these attacks? And of course, around me are people saying, sit down, stop it, leave them alone, you're embarrassing us. These are Jewish leaders whose names you might know, telling me to shut up, but I wouldn't relent. And I said, I'll ask you again, will you condemn Arabs murdering Jews this very week, just like we condemned the Jew who murdered an Arab? And he said, you people just don't war. You don't want peace. Will you condemn it? And he walks out of the room. He gets up and he leaves the room in front of all of us. And we got into the hallway. People were condemning me for embarrassing the entire group by making this an issue with this man. We don't fight for ourselves. We don't fight for the truth. We don't defend ourselves. And I'm sorry that things have not changed all that much even now. By the way, there was a story written about that meeting, and the JTA wrote the story. You'd think that would be the headline, how he walked out, refused to condemn Jews who were murdered by Arabs. That was not in the story. Another major issue in the Jewish world is a Palestinian-Arab state. Benjamin Netanyahu wrote, when we leave land, Arab terror organizations take over immediately. If there's an Arab state, this would increase terrorism, would place Israel's major population centers in easy distance of rocket strikes and terror infiltration. Will make the PA government that incites and pays for murdering Jews only worse if it gets a state. Gideon Sa'ar, the foreign minister of Israel, in a meeting we had in Israel last year, begged us to publicly come out opposing a Palestinian state because they're getting pressure to set up a state. Begged us to publicly do it. And he explained that North Korea, Iran, and Syria all have states. They're not lovely because they have states. I asked major Orthodox leaders and non-Orthodox leaders, will you now come out opposing a state? All I heard was, it's too controversial. My board won't let me. A state's the only solution. Not a single, even since 10/7, not a single Jewish organization has come out opposing a state except the Zionist Organization of America. Not a single one. In fact, and this is public, Ted Deutsch, the head of the American Jewish Committee, this past year wrote an article saying we need a Palestinian state. We need it, not only not opposing it. Did I do something? Was that me? Well, Dennis Ross of Washington for Near East Policy, the great negotiator, he wrote an op-ed after 10/7. Not only do we need a state, but we want Abbas to be the head of it. Right? Not a single group. I had a public fight with Stand With Us. Who promoting a state, and a problem in campuses where they promote a so-called two-state solution, and begging them to stop. And she kept saying publicly that Prime Minister Netanyahu supports a state when it wasn't true. So, you know, and when I talk to people who work at Stand With Us, they say, well, we feel if we don't call for a Palestinian state, we'll look like we're inhumane, that we're not trying to help the Arabs. We'll look like we're mean. Even though a state would be a terror state, it would be a disaster. So I've had these sorts of trouble, especially with the Palestinian state, and we're still lobbying against it. By the way, a certain important lobbying group won't promote legislation on the Hill unless they insert, and we support a two-state solution. Unless we support a two-state solution, because that way you get more Democrats on it. And we say we can still pass the legislation. They say, well, we want it to be passed with larger numbers, so they actually, you know, ignore the fact that a state would be a disaster. The Palestinian Constitution. A few weeks ago, the Palestinian Authority came out with a constitution. You probably don't know about it because the Jewish media and no media really presented it. This constitution calls for persistent terrorism, continuous Palestinian struggle, destroy and replace all of Israel, make it a constitutional requirement to perpetually reward Arab terrorists and their families. They made it law. establishes and enforces Islam, Sharia law, Pan-Arabism, a Judean right state, no Israelis will be allowed in it, Palestinian Arab supremacy, eliminates, criminalizes, and perpetrates lawfare against Jews. It enshrines the Palestinian Arab right of return, that any Arab who wants to move in Israel have a right to move in Israel, makes all of Jerusalem the Palestinian state capital. This constitution contains no notion of living in peace with Israel, but instead contemplates replacing Israel. We, of course, condemn this bitterly. I couldn't get a single Jewish group to condemn this, saying it'll only make it worse, you'll upset them, that's not how you deal with things. So they're just really afraid, really afraid. I call the Jewish leaders, I'm sorry to say it, frightened appeasers. It's not really an ideology. They're scared of our enemies. Look, we've had 2,000 years of hatred, bigotry, murder, pogroms, Holocaust. It's damaged so many of us. We're scared to death of our neighbors when it comes to these sorts of issues. So we want to appease. They want concessions in every way possible, but giving up more land only means more areas for launching terror. They believe we have to do all we can to improve their economy. But there's not an economic basis for this war. It's Israel's existence. They say you can only make peace with your enemies. Rabin used to say that. We can only make peace with your enemies. You can only make peace with enemies that no longer wants to be an enemy. And these people continue to want to be an enemy. And other people say we have to do something. We can't allow the status quo. I asked Ariel Sharon, why is he throwing Jews out of Gaza and northern Samaria? I asked him personally, one-on-one, and he said, I'm being pressured to do something. I have to do something, and this is the easiest thing to do. Throwing out 10,000 Jews, the easiest thing to do? It made no sense. Appeasement fails. In fact, another famous quote by Winston Churchill is, those who appease the crocodile will simply be eaten last. In fact, there's a famous story of Churchill condemning the Munich deal with the Nazis, giving up land and all sorts of other issues. That lady Astor was so angry, saying, I'm so angry at you, Winston, that you're making it hard. Here we're getting to peace and you're discouraging people. Winston, if I were your wife, I would put poison in your tea. And Churchill said, and if I were your husband, I would drink it. Another issue, and this is the most important in my view. It's funny, my 12th grade teacher said, never make an argument by saying, in my opinion. He said, as soon as you say, in my opinion, you weaken your argument, because you're immediately saying, I know that maybe it's just me, everyone else disagrees. Just say what you believe. Don't say, in my opinion. Anyhow, the most serious issue facing the world, in my opinion, is radical Islam. We've called attention to Islamic anti-Semitism. I've testified in Congress condemning radical Islam. ADL would be sitting next to me. They wouldn't even mention it at the hearings. Imams are promoting hatred and violence all over America. The Hamas covenant calls for the murder of every Jew, Article 7, destroying Israel, Article 11. And the Fatah Charter calls for the armed struggle to continue. We have written letters to imams asking that they stop these horrible sermons calling for murder. And we've had Congress members write to them. I've asked Jewish organizations to join in signing these letters to urge imams who are making these horrible sermons to stop, and they won't do it. They think it'll just upset them more. They don't want to get involved. But no lesser than Egypt's president, al-Sisi, understands the horror of Islam and the danger it's promoting. He said a number of years ago, in Al-Azhar University, the president of Egypt, is it possible that 2 billion Muslims should want to kill the rest of the world's inhabitants? That's 7 billion, impossible. We are in need of a religious revolution. You imams are responsible before Allah. The entire world is waiting. he makes this incredible speech, and he was bitterly attacked, and we never heard another thing. But what he said was the absolute truth, making it clear that Islam is a serious, serious problem. Let's see, I want to cut things out. It's getting late. No? I didn't realize so many of my relatives were here. Thank you. Let me just mention even this Iran war. The Reform movement came out with a statement about the war, the largest Jewish movement in America, religious movement in America, condemning administration's lack of full engagement with Congress in launching the war, questioning whether we have a clear and thought-out strategy, calling for strong congressional oversight, falsely portraying the Palestinians as not having access to shelters from Iranian bombs, a complete lie, and on. So here the most important movement has refused to come out supporting this war, which not only protects America and the West, but protects Israel. And Israel, over 90% support this war. It's really overwhelming. Let's see. Well, I'll tell you a story about the Jerusalem Embassy Act. I worked with, I think I was the only major Jewish group to work with Senator John Kyle. I believe that's true. He was the senator of Arizona. He's the one who initiated writing legislation to move the embassy. I asked all the major groups to help me to get this legislation passed to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. They all said, stop this campaign war. It's going to cause violence against Jews, and it will destroy the peace process. Don't do it. Couldn't get any of the Jewish organizations to support moving the embassy. And they wouldn't lobby for it. We lobbied for it alone, along with Kyle and Newt Gingrich. We got 8 members of the Senate to sign it out of 100, to get on it, 8 out of 100. And John Kyle said, let's go to Bob Dole. Bob Dole was running for president. He was a majority leader. We went to Dole, and John Kyle did all the talking, said, we want you to get on this bill. Dole was not a friend of Israel. And Kyle said, look, you get on the bill, you're going to get Jewish money for your campaign. This will help you. And Dole said, all right, look, I'll get on it if you can get the Jewish members of the Senate to get on it. Get the Jewish members of the Senate to get on it. We had a meeting with, I think it was 12 Jewish members. You know their names, you know, Lautenberg and Feinstein and Levin and even Joe Lieberman. And we asked them to get on this bill. And they all said this will cause violence and destroy the peace process. We couldn't get a single Jewish senator on that bill. And we couldn't get a single Jewish organization to support the bill to move the embassy to Jerusalem. But despite that, Bob Dole, we went back to Bob Dole. Kyle did all the talking. And Bob Dole said, I'll get on the bill. I think it's the right thing. Bob Dole said, not a friend. When he got on the bill, we suddenly had went from 8 to 35. He was majority leader. When it went from 8 to 35, the Washington Post wrote, it's in the Washington Post, that AIPAC now started the lobby for the bill. They thought that this bill might actually pass, and they didn't want to be left behind. And we're grateful. We wanted them to help us. And we did pass the bill 93-5 in the Senate, 347-37 in the House. But Dianne Feinstein put in a poison pill. She put in the legislation that any president can invoke a security waiver, that he can just say, for security reasons, I'm not moving the embassy. This was Dianne Feinstein, by the way, urged by Dan Shapiro. Dan Shapiro was her chief of staff. Dan Shapiro became ambassador to Israel later. They put this poison pill in, Jews, and for 18 years, nothing happened until Donald J. Trump decided to move the embassy. And let me tell you another story. Behind the scenes, a factor in this. I was invited by the Polish government to come and meet with their major officials. I'm sitting in a Polish restaurant with my wife and with another friend, and my phone rings. Who is it? It's Sheldon Adelson. Sheldon Adelson, of course, is the billionaire owner of Las Vegas Sands Casino Hotel. This was November. Trump had just won the election, And Sheldon called and he said, Mort, I'm so excited. You're the first person I'm calling. I just came from Trump Tower, just had a meeting with Trump. And Trump promised me in his first term, he will move the embassy to Jerusalem. Sheldon Adelson was a big factor. I said, he just sent it because he asked him. I said, well, I did say I'd give him $100 million. So of course, so here's another major bill. The Jewish organizations were not involved until really toward the end of it. And another major issue that ZOA initiated was the issue about Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act protected in the past, primarily blacks and Hispanics from discrimination and harassment. It did not protect Jews. Jews were not covered. And we at ZOA started a campaign to include Jews. They reinterpreted it. Again, I went to all the Jewish organizations and they said, Abe Foxman said to me, Mort, don't do this. If you're going to end up promoting suing people, that's terrible. It'll make them hate us more. Drop this, Mort. You don't know what you're doing. Mort, I've been in this business for 40 years. I know what I'm doing. You don't. You're a newcomer here. Stop this. We went to all the other groups. They refused to help, also afraid that this will only antagonize people you start suing. In fact, one of the organizations called ZOA and me gunslingers from the East Coast. We're gunslingers from the East Coast condemning and attacking this bill. We lobbied Congress relentlessly. It took us 6 years. We had 40 members of the House. We got them all in the legislation to push to reinterpret it, led, by the way, by Brad Sherman, a Democrat. Brad Sherman, a Democrat. And then after a 6-year fight, when it looked like we might get this passed, suddenly AJC, B'nai B'rith, all of them joined in. They saw this was going to pass, and we got it passed. So every legal case that you read about under Title VI, suing universities, boards of high schools or whatever, none of those lawsuits would have occurred if it wasn't for the efforts of the Zionist Organization of America. Black Lives Matter. You remember those guys? In 2020, they were the big news. I read their charter. That's all. I didn't do anything, but I looked them up and I read their charter. Their charter said that Israel trains police to murder blacks. Yes, the Black Lives Matter. It's back in 2020. Israel's committing genocide. One-sided slaughters committed by Israel. Massacres and ethnic cleansing committed by Israel. They called for denying funds and military equipment for Israel. They called for anti-Israel, anti-Semitic boycotts, diversity and sanctions against Israel. They also held events and meetings with terrorist organizations, Population Front for the Liberation of Palestine, Al-Haq, other anti-Semitic organizations. So I read all this. The whole world was screaming how great Black Lives Matter is. In fact, Rick Jacobs, the head of the Reform Movement, at a meeting of the Conference of Presidents, I'm sitting there, publicly said, Black Lives Matter is the civil rights movement of our era. And that guy has to stop trying to fight it because it's a civil rights movement of our era. 600 organizations headed by ADL took out a full-page ad in the New York Times with other major groups signing it. 600 signed it, praising Black Lives Matter. I wrote articles condemning Black Lives Matter, saying they should be put on the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate group. And by the way, this was heresy, because Black Lives Matter was it. It was the people, you know, you're protecting blacks, you're doing the right thing. When I did that, Rick Jacobs and Rabbi Blumenthal, the head of the conservative movement, joined with 30 people, organizational heads, put together a petition calling me a racist, Morton Klein a racist, ZOA a racist organization, demanding we be thrown out of the Conference of Presidents, the umbrella group, and that no organization should allow Morton Klein to speak anywhere. This was Jacobs and Blumenthal attacking me and they were defending an anti-Semitic group. It made him feel righteous and holy with the image that they're protecting black civil rights, but they weren't. They were protecting a hate group who hates Jewish people more than they hate anyone else. Fortunately, I was not thrown out of the conference. I'm sure there are many people who would have invited me to speak who don't because of this. But here's another example of Jewish organizations just not looking at the facts and wanting to do what feels good and what feels right. When Obama gave really bad speeches condemning Israel, in the speech he would always say things like, I have Israel's back, I care about Israel's security. And the major organizations would put out letters praising him for saying he has Israel's back and Israel's security. I would put out statements blasting the speech because he's comparing Israel to Nazis. He's saying we treat Palestinians in a way that's going to end their lives and make their lives miserable, and all sorts of other hateful things. And they would call me, names you would know, and say, would you stop condemning these speeches? Morton, you don't know how to do it. What you do is you take the good part of the speech and praise it. You ignore the rest and keep them to the good part. Yes, this is what major Jewish leaders told me, to simply ignore the terrible things and just say something about the positive things. So none of these presidents ever got the message that what they're saying is horrific and should not be permitted. And we won't tolerate it. But no, the opposite happened. Virtually every Jewish group praised these speeches. We were alone in condemning the horrible things that were said in these speeches. Imagine the power we could have if all of us would start condemning the Obama speeches and the Biden speeches, but we didn't do it, and we don't do it. In fact, one day I was sitting with Ben-Zion Netanyahu. Bibi's father was a close friend of mine, Ben-Zion. He was a renowned Jewish historian. He taught at Dropsy College, he taught at Cornell and other places. And I'm in his house one day. I spent 3 afternoons a year at his house talking. And I said, Ben-Zion, I am so horrified by the Jewish leaders. They just shock me. They shock me how they just don't do what's right. They don't tell the truth. It just shocks me. And he says, Morton, you've now proven to me one thing. I said, what have I proven to you? Morton, you've proven to me you are ignorant of Jewish history. You know nothing of Jewish history. If you knew Jewish history, you wouldn't be shocked. Jewish leaders have always been this way. This is nothing new. That's what Ben-Zion Netanyahu, a historian, said to me. But despite all this, we've always miraculously survived. We Jews arose from the onslaughts throughout the Middle Ages, from the pogroms in the 1800s. We miraculously arose again from the ashes of Auschwitz to recreate our beautiful state of Israel in 48. That is really the lesson of our history, that the indomitable spirit of the Jews, with our belief in ourselves, our culture, our talent, and our Torah and an almighty God, we can never be destroyed because God promised that we would be an eternal people. And unlike politicians, God keeps his promises. So the miracle of a Jewish state, due to another miraculous victory against great odds, and a victory over 40 million Arabs in 48, where the Jews were vastly outnumbered and outarmed. Even the U.S. had an arms embargo in Israel then. Yet we overcame and defeated those who would destroy us. We've had many miracles throughout history, and this should hearten us. Who would have believed that that even though Israel was the David, the huge Arab world was the Goliath, Israel would win the wars in 48, 56, 67, and 73. It's a miracle. Who would have believed that Israel, which began with 600,000 Jews, now has 7 million Jews in Israel? That is a miracle. Who would have believed that Israel only had 6% of the Jewish population of the world in 1948? Today, the majority of Jews live in Eretz Yisrael. It's extraordinary. Who would have believed that Israel? Yes, it is. Who would have believed that Israel would have made the desert bloom? And this is miraculous. The Torah says that the holy man will remain barren until you return. The Jews have left the Holy Land, but the Torah says it will remain barren. No one will be able to grow anything there. And that's what happened. And that is an extraordinary miracle. In fact, I'll say the story of Gush Katif, Gaza, shall land the Arabs called accursed. And as soon as the Jews came, it began to yield the most beautiful fruits, flowers, and plants. This tiny portion of land in Gaza yielded at one time most of the agricultural exports of of Israel. But when the Jews left, when they were thrown out by Sharon, it became useless again. Even the insects participated. The vegetables that had once been famously bug-free began to develop bugs. The thriving business of Gush Katif languished in the hands of the Arabs. Nothing grew. Even the managers who had worked under the Jews, had all the expertise to make it go, couldn't do it. The land would not cooperate because God controls history. And he said nothing will grow there. So don't worry about having left this land. This is an incredible miracle. And who would believe that we now have more students studying in yeshivas in Israel than any time in history? Who would believe that Orthodox Jews make up 40% of the officers in the Israeli army? And we fought to have Haredim becoming part of the military, and that's happening more and more and more. Who would believe that for the first time in history, a country would bring black people, Ethiopian Jews, not to be slaves, but to be a free and proud people? That country is Israel. And who would believe that after 2,000 years of dispersion, there are now over 500,000 Jews in the holy city of Jerusalem, 500,000 Jews in the holy land of Yehuda and Shomron, given to the Jewish people by the Lord God, King of the universe. And after 2,000 years, we Jews have sovereignty over all of the historically holy Jewish city of Yerushalayim, never to be divided again. The prophet Ezekiel said, if the watchman sees the sword advancing against the Jews, as we see with Iran, and the Jews do not blow their horn, so that the Jewish people are not warned, and the sword comes and destroys even one Jew, I, God Almighty, will demand a reckoning. And let me assure you, we will continue to blow our horn and fight as hard as we can. Benjamin Netanyahu said only several years ago publicly, when I think of ZOA, I think of an organization that refuses to compromise on the truth regardless of prevailing faction. ZOA is a bulwark in the defense of Israel. I urge you to support Israel. By the way, Ron Dermer also said, you, the ZOA, are not Jews who bend your knees. When we really need you, we know you will be standing at our side. So we should, with all the difficulties that are going on, we should be strong and not be afraid, for God is with us. Our holy Torah promises again that we'll be an eternal people, never to be destroyed. So it has been, so it will continue to be. The cause of Israel is moral and just. We must speak out with courage because truth and justice and God are on the side of Eretz Yisrael. With your help, with the strength and will of the Israeli people, with the strength and will of the extraordinary IDF, with the help of Almighty God, there'll be new miracles, as we're seeing really daily basis even now, that will happen, that we cannot foresee that will happen. And the people of Israel will dwell in their holy land safely and securely for eternity. We will prevail. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.